Hey everyone, it is Mom of Two, Wife of One. Welcome back to my channel. If you haven't already, please subscribe, click the notification bell. It's down there somewhere, I'm sure in that general area. Make sure after this video is posted that you like, share, subscribe, comment, do all those things. I love talking with you guys about any and everything, but especially Married at First Sight. So we are here to do the review and recap of Married at First Sight, season 13, episode 6. I will say that I'm bored already of this season. I feel like it's already dragging on. And the fact that we're only episode 6 and there are probably at least, if they go according to what they did last season, there are at least 16 episodes, which means we have 10 more weeks of dealing with these couples. But it's okay. I said I'm going to do it, so I'm here and we're going to do this. So this week, the couples are still on their honeymoon, but they're having the hard conversations about what it's going to be like when they go back to Houston, Texas, when they merge their lives together. Because one thing I do like that a lot of couples, even if they've been together for years, are uncomfortable having some of these hard conversations about finances, about living together, about just a lot of tough things they're talking about, merging their money together, their political stances. And I like that for the most part, all the couples are very vulnerable in having these conversations, and they're having them, with no judgment and really just trying to figure out how things are going to work when they get back. So I really admire all of that about all the couples, actually. So we'll start with the first couple, Bao and Johnny. The fact that she is still talking about snoring, she talked about this last episode where she snores, and it's an insecurity for her, and she was crying when she was talking about it. It's probably very insensitive of me to laugh at someone about their insecurity, but we're talking about snoring, and in my head it's like, that ain't something you can control, baby. So I just don't have sympathy. It just seemed like a storyline that they dramatized for no reason, and I could see Johnny was even like who cares, not a big deal. But one thing that it led them to realize is that they view life very differently, in terms of Bao tends to overthink things and Johnny tends to stay in the moment. Johnny's also, they learned, and they both learned about each other, that they're both very big on planning and being organized, and they're very particular. So they are a little concerned about how it's going to be when they get back and they're living together in the same space, how those particularities are going to either mesh well together or they may be completely different, and it might cause some conflicts. But the whole thing about her being in her head too much, I definitely understood that, because I know I overthink a lot of things. But what I love is that when something bothers him, he kind of sits with it a moment to figure out the best way to broach it to her, but he doesn't shy away from bringing it up. So I love, and she loved that too. She's like, I love that he calls me on my stuff, and not in a disrespectful way, but he's letting me know, hey, this is something that concerns me. And he was open and honest with her. He's like, honestly, if we were dating, this would be the time where I would consider that a red flag, and I'd be ready to move on and find somebody else. And he wasn't saying that to hurt her, but I think he was saying that I know that I'm not dating you. I know that I'm married to you. So I'm going to make every effort possible to make sure this works. And that's why I'm bringing to your attention now, because I want to make sure that collectively we can work on these things so that our marriage will be successful. And so I really liked that. I really enjoyed that conversation. And after that, they went parasailing. And let me tell you, if you guys have never been parasailing, it is amazing and it's peaceful and it's beautiful. I went parasailing actually for my honeymoon as well, and so they did the parasailing where both of you are strapped in and you go up. My husband had the parasailing where we went up one at a time, and being that high up and just seeing the beauty and the stillness of the water and being that close to the clouds, like I felt so peaceful, and I just had a conversation with God the whole time I was up there. So I just highly recommend parasailing if you guys have never been before. That's just a little aside. But, I mean, for the most part, that's all that really happened. They talked, again, about them being particular and how they're both neat, but their brand of neat may not mesh up with each other. They had a little, not conflicts per se, but I guess they had discussion about showerings. I guess he takes multiple showers a day. And she's like, sometimes I may be just tired and too lazy, and I may not take a shower that day. Which I think is fair, especially in the pandemic. And his main thing is, I just don't want you bringing dirt into the bed. Can you at least rinse off? Can you do this? And again, I feel like that's not something that's a huge deal. And her idea of compromise was, if I don't feel like showering, and you don't want dirt in the bed, I have no problem that night just sleeping on the couch, like just that one night. And he's like, well, why can't you just like shower? Or if you do get in the bed, you can just change the sheets. Like, I'm not changing the sheets every day. If I'm too tired to take a shower, I'm too tired to change the sheets. It just seemed like a conversation that didn't need to be put on camera, because it seemed like a very petty kind of conversation, not terribly important. I guess it's important to them, but from a standpoint of editors and making the show entertaining to watch, that was a very unentertaining conversation to have about how often they shower. I was so bored by this entire episode, and I was just like, who cares? Like, really, who cares? But I still like them as individuals. I don't know what that's gonna. Oh, one thing that did happen that was big. If you all have been watching the show from the beginning, you know that when everyone was told that they're getting matched up, Johnny called his dad to tell him. His dad was very disappointed, didn't agree with his decision to do the show at all, and it was just a whole big thing, and he refused to go to the wedding. So Johnny talked to his dad on his honeymoon, and he told his dad, like, yes, she's Asian, and he told his dad probably all about Bao and how he met Bao before, and he already knows about her, already knows her personality and is already familiar with the kind of person that she is. And his dad, just seemed very relieved and that he's happy for Johnny. And I know how much that meant to Johnny, so I was really glad he got to get that from his dad. I still think his dad probably won't be on the show, which is perfectly fine. But I love the fact that that was the one thing he was waiting for, the one person in his family he really wanted approval from. So the fact that his father gave it to him on his honeymoon, I know that meant a lot to him. And I could tell how excited Bao was for him as well. So that was a really sweet and tender moment. But other than that, I still like both of them as individuals. I don't know how they're going to fare long term. I want them to be together and just be strong and wonderful and all that stuff. But when you are picky like he is, or particular like he is, and particular like she is, those two types of particularities may not always match up. And it's going to take a lot of compromise. One thing they're good at is a lot of conversation, so at least that's good. They can kind of talk things out. But I don't know. Things get interesting when you get back home, and the honeymoon, everything is flowers and roses and it's room service and it's great and it's wonderful. But when you get home and now that person's in your space every day, coming home from work, when you normally come home from work, take your shoes off, maybe strip down to your drawers and just kind of hang out on the couch. Now there's somebody waiting for you and you may not be comfortable doing that. Or now there's somebody who may be picking up after you or that you have to pick up after. There's a lot of things that you have to adjust to when it comes to living with a person. And for some people, it's a seamless thing. For other people, it's like, but I'm used to living alone and I like doing this. Or even if there aren't things that you like to do, some people, when they come home, they need their quiet. They need their space. They need to go to another room, decompress from work, decompress from school or whatever. They don't want to talk to anybody. They just need to be in a room by themselves. When you're married and that person is right there when you get home, that person may not understand that right away. And sometimes it's hard to communicate that, because you never want to come off like you don't like the person or like you want them to get out or something like that. So it is hard sometimes to communicate, hey, I just need a few minutes to myself when I first get home from work. Just a few minutes just to kind of decompress. But it's important to have those conversations. And sometimes you may not even realize you're a person who needs to decompress. If you live by yourself, then when you walk through the door and nobody's there, obviously you're decompressing, but you may not necessarily know that you need that time until somebody is there and wanted to ding as soon as you walk through the door. So I think it'll be interesting for all these couples to see how they react when they move back home and when they move in together, especially because some of them have pets. And as we saw, some people aren't excited about pets. Hence, we'll talk about Meral and Gil. Meral is definitely being painted as the person that nobody's really going to like. She's being painted as spoiled, obviously as a princess, as ungrateful, as just a lot of things. But one thing I will say, and also as someone who complains about a lot of stuff, but one thing I will say is that I think Meral and Gil, I love how much they laugh together. I like that they're also not afraid to have tough conversations. I like that even though it seems like she's self-absorbed and all about herself, she genuinely listens to him and the things that he wants and is interested in. She genuinely tries when he wants to try something new. And I think she genuinely asks questions because she really wants to get to know him. So I'm seeing that side of her, which I am appreciative of, but the other side of her far outweighs those little pockets of, oh, Meral is nice, or oh, she's attentive. Everything else kind of outweighs that because they focus so much on the fact that she complains all the time. And I do like that when she complains, Gil doesn't seem turned off. It's more like, that's my wife, that's how she is. But he's not afraid to call her on it at all. He doesn't like resent her, I don't think, for her complaining. He kind of just tries to bring her back down, like, girl, it's fine, girl, it's not that serious, we still want to do whatever. So I like the attitude that he has when it comes to, I don't want to say dealing with her, but I guess when it comes to relating to her, I like how he relates to her. And they bonded about growing up really poor. They talked about having kids. She got him some chocolate chip cookies in a previous episode. He got her some macarons because she really been wanting them, and he really wanted chocolate chip cookies, so she got him this whole platter of chocolate chip cookies, and they drank champagne, ate cookies on the balcony. It was really sweet. She's not eager to be around his dog. She kind of made it clear from the beginning that she's not really a dog person because she doesn't want to walk the dog, doesn't want to clean up after the dog. He's had this dog since he was 6 weeks old. The dog's name is Hype, which I think is a really cute name. And that's going to be a big deal. People are serious about their pets, their dogs, their cats, their ferrets, whatever it is. People are dead serious about their pets. And not saying, well, no, I can't even get on her for not being a dog person. Not everybody is a pet person. But I think that if you have a dog, and I'm hoping he mentioned this to the experts, that he mentioned, no, it's important to me that this person loves my dog. Now, if he didn't mention that, that's kind of on him that he was matched with somebody who's not a dog person. That's not her fault at all. And I know that for a lot of people, they'll use that as a point against her because people, I think, are turning against her anyway because they just don't like her personality. But that's not her fault. She's not a dog person. I'm sure she didn't specifically say, I want someone who does not have pets. It probably didn't dawn on her at all. And so maybe that was the expert's fault for not really exploring that further. But that's probably not going to bode over very well. Because if you had a dog for 6 weeks and the dog is like a grown dog, like they're tied at the hip. And he's going to choose the dog before you just because he's had the dog longer. So don't know really how that's going to work out, but it should be interesting, at least entertaining to watch. I still don't think they're going to make it, though. That's just not going to happen. Michaela and Zach, there's really nothing to say. Zach still has COVID. He's still in Florida. Michaela's still in Houston. I like that Zach called the guys a couple times. And so, he talked to the couples, like updated them on how he was feeling. I thought that was cool. I like that the guys came by and talked to him and threw beers up to him. And still just kind of giving him encouragement and giving him support even while he's going through this. So I thought that was really cool too. But again, there's nothing really to say about this except for Zach is still so fine. Neither here nor there, but it was so nice to see his face. It was like, oh, you still look good. Yeah. Brett and Ryan, they bore me. Brett and Ryan are really boring. I like Brett as a person, and I do think that this is the most I've heard Ryan talk in any of the other episodes. But as a couple, they're boring to me. They went kayaking, which was fine. She was afraid. He was kind of making fun of her because she was afraid of this huge manatee that was in the water. And I'm not mad at her. I am not a fan of stuff in the water either. I don't mind doing water things, but I ain't trying to be no animal. Like, I don't want to do that either. So I was with her on that. But other than that, I mean, he's an outdoor. So I guess that's one thing she's picking up on is that they have a lot of things that are different. He's very much an outdoors person. He's a country guy, likes country music, all that stuff, goes hunting. She doesn't do any of that stuff. So I think she is starting to get a little worried about so many things that they have that are not in common, as opposed to things they have that are in common. Which is, I think, is a valid concern, but you don't want to marry somebody who's just like you either. So I think it helps that you guys have different interests as long as that other person doesn't penalize you for having interests different from theirs, and as long as they're not trying to force you into doing everything that they do. It's one thing, it's like every once in a while we'll listen to country music, or every once in a while we'll do something outdoorsy. But as long as it's not forced, then I think it's okay, because it's fine for couples to have their own thing that they do as well, like separate from each other. So hopefully that'll be the case, but I don't know. But one thing I do like and that she likes is that even though she's not an outdoorsy person, he's definitely taking her out of her comfort zone. And he seemed eager to want to introduce her to other things that he likes, which I think is okay. As long as she's up for it, I think it's okay. And she brought up politics and how, it's a big deal for her. And of course, she was never specific, but I get the impression that she's a Democrat and he's a Republican. And I don't know if she knows for a fact that he's a Republican or if based off of conversations, she believes that's what he is. But I truly tuned this conversation out because I was just like, oh, I was ready for the episode to be over at that point. And I felt kind of bad, but then I was like, no, these episodes don't need to be 2 hours like they have been. some of these things they could definitely cut out, and it's really boring. But I still like Brett. Ryan, I don't know if I like him or not. It's just like, whatever. Rachel and Jose, I felt attacked. Let me tell you why. Jose was like, yeah, I planned something special for you. I planned, a nice little bike ride. And she was like, okay, but what if, I can or cannot ride a bike? And he's like, you don't know how to ride a bike? Let me say something. I'm 39 years old. I never learned how to ride a bike. No judgment. This is a judgment-free channel, so you will not judge me for not knowing how to ride. Because guess what? I'm grown. I can drive a car. I don't need to ride no daggone bike. I just never learned. At one point I owned 3 bikes and still never learned how to ride a bike. We would just get on it and go downhill and then walk that mofo back up. So I never learned how to ride a bike. And I'm perfectly fine not knowing how to ride. It's perfectly okay. It hasn't stopped me from achieving anything I want to achieve in my life. So I'm good. But I definitely felt attacked that Jose was kind of judging her because she never learned how to ride a bike. Feeling slightly attacked, but it's okay. We're going to move on. I like that she made a list of questions of things. So I feel like for them, they talk a lot about not just, how do you like this? How do you like that? They talked like, hey, we're married. This is the future. Not this future. This is going to be forever. How do you want to proceed about this? What are some things you want to accomplish before you have children? Which I think is a very good question, a very valid question. And I guess it was kind of stuck like, oh, I don't know. She's like, well, I know one thing for me is like, I would love to take a trip to Switzerland. I've heard it's beautiful. You can do this here, this, and this. So I would love to do that before we have kids. And he kind of was like, well, Switzerland's expensive. Like, what about a trip to Vegas or a trip to, New York? It's cheaper. And she was like, but the whole point is to dream about things we want to do before we have kids. Yes, it's expensive, so that's why she wants to do it before having kids, because she knows that kids can be expensive. So I thought that was a valid thing to say she wanted to do. I thought that her reasoning behind Switzerland seemed to make sense. And again, knowing how expensive children can be, I thought it made all the sense in the world that she would pick an expensive place to go to before the kids. She's not saying let's go there next week. And she's not saying let's have kids next year. She's like, hey, kids won't come for a little bit. We have some time. So what about we do these things and then we have kids and we can have smaller adventures with the kids. So I didn't like the fact that he kind of shut that down already. Like, oh, well, that's too much. We can't do it. You didn't even look into it. You didn't look into a payment plan. Like, that's a discussion that needs to be had. So I'm glad that she didn't go along with it. She was like, okay, so let's table that for now. We'll discuss that a little bit later. I'm glad she took that stance. And he said that he's trying to learn to pull back a little bit. She's very independent. So he's trying to allow her to be independent while still hoping that she'll allow him to, quote unquote, be the man and be the protector and the provider in some situations. One thing that I did have a question about, they were talking about finances, and he is the one who's paid off 2 houses. He has no student loan debt. He's like very organized about his finances, has a credit score apparently of close to 850. I was like, where to do that at? That's amazing. And so she asked him, when you were looking for someone for this experiment, did you say that you wanted someone whose finances were close to yours? And he was like, I said that I wanted somebody on my level. Now, on my level could mean a lot of different things. And so I did put in all caps, like, what does that mean exactly? Because and I also thought this was kind of interesting. I feel like a man like Jose, he either wants a woman who is, quote unquote, on his level, meaning she has a high credit score and she has no debt, or I would imagine that because he's so big on being this protector and this provider, that he would want someone who's under his level so that he can swoop in and kind of be the superhero or the super husband and help her get her credit together and help her save and help her do all this other stuff. So I thought it was interesting that he kind of phrased it that way, but also on my level could mean so many different things. It could mean, I want someone who is stable in their career. I want someone who's interested in saving money. I want someone who cares about their credit score. I want someone who does this and this. And I feel like Rachel checks off a lot of those boxes. Even if she doesn't save like he saves, I didn't get the impression that she's necessarily in debt. So I thought that was kind of an interesting turn of phrase, so to speak. She also brought up the subject of intimacy and how she doesn't want to wait months to have sex. She was like, if months go by and we're still not having sex, I consider that a problem. He said, which kind of bothers me, and she looked a little perturbed as well, like, well, I don't think it should be rushed either. I need to have certain boxes checked. That phrasing kind of upsets me a little bit because it's okay to have a list of things that you want, a list of things you expect, But to say I need certain boxes checked, the problem with that is that as your wife, she doesn't know what those boxes are. So she could be failing and not even know that she's failing. And I don't get the impression that he's talking to her, he's not talking in detail about what exactly he needs to see from her or what exactly he needs to experience with her before he's ready to be intimate. But I mean, we'll see. I don't know what's going to happen with them. I think that my original prediction is that it's not going to work. I think he'll be a little too much for her. I think that she'll be strong enough in speaking up for herself and saying when she doesn't like something. I think it is going to be very difficult for him to allow her to be as independent as she wants to be. But we'll see. I mean, anything could happen. It's only week 6. And like I said, we have at least 10 more weeks to go. So who knows what will take place. And I put the season feels like it's dragging on already. It really is. The couples did get together twice. And I like that they got together for dinner and drinks. And that's when Zach called to update them on his progress. I like that all the men held the chairs for the women. I thought that was really sweet and romantic. And I said that, this is the most I've seen Ryan talk. And I like, let me see. So when they were all talking about sex, they were asking who do you think has had sex and who do you think will have sex out of all of us, who will have sex first kind of conversation. None of them have had sex yet, which I find kind of sort of surprising. But again, I have to remind myself, this is week 6 for us. It's only day 6 for them. So they're still learning each other. They're still trying to figure out what it means to be a husband and a wife. And they're still on their honeymoon. They're in their honeymoon phase where they don't have to worry about a lot of different things. They don't have to worry about cleaning up after each other, about cooking for each other, not really worried about their bills and putting money together just yet. Because they are in their honeymoon. Once they get home, like I said, is when all the real stuff starts. And that's when they'll start figuring out, is this really what I want? Is this really who I want? And, all that stuff. But one thing that happened when it came to sex, I like Rachel's answer. She was like, of course, on the honeymoon, everything is rainbows and unicorns and it's great and it's wonderful. She was like, I need to see what it's like actually living with him. And she was saying that she thinks with her heart as well as her head. In her heart, she's ready to be intimate. But her head is like, pump the brakes. You need to see him in his actual environment. Because people have different faces that they're going to show you. A lot of people have a vacation version of them and they have a real life version of them. This is the vacation version that we're seeing of all these couples. So the real life version, we don't know what the heck that looks like. So they did that and then they went on a boat ride. And they played Never Have I Ever as a drinking game. I don't recommend that. Well, I'll say I don't recommend that drinking game. I guess if you are in your 20s, yeah, it's a fun game to play. In your 30s, not so much. I played it before. It was the one and only time that I've gotten like drunk. You'll need to hear the story, but it wasn't that fun. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but it wasn't that great. But it definitely made me reminisce about college. Like, oh, look at them playing Never Have I Ever. Never will I ever play that again. But I always like when the girls split off with each other and the guys split off with each other to kind of update each other on how the marriage is going. It's great for them to ask questions, to kind of get advice. But every season, they always have one couple that is the expert couple. This couple has been married as long as everybody else. This couple met their spouse the same time as everybody else. But all of a sudden, because their marriage is going the best, they become the experts and give the great advice to all these other people. And it's like, if you don't sit your happy self down somewhere, you've been married for 10 days like they have. I don't know who that's going to be this season. I feel like Jose has a lot of advice. I feel like Johnny kind of leans on Jose a little bit more because Jose is like the romantic or whatever. Jose don't do nothing for me. Again, that's neither here nor there, but I get the impression that he's going to be the one out of the guys who's going to be like the go-to person almost. For the women, I don't know. All the women I feel like are pretty open and they're open and honest, but I feel like they're all very honest with the fact that they don't really know what they're doing and that everything is kind of up in the air. And one thing they talked about when the girls got together is that, getting married is obviously different from a dating app, right? And I don't know dating apps because they weren't a thing when I got married because I'm old. But when you have dating apps, you're basing everything on the superficial, on what you see, what they write in their profile without really getting to know them. Getting married, especially at first sight, you're forced to get deep with the questions. You're forced to get deep with your interactions. And because you're on a time clock, so to speak, every moment counts. And yeah, like they said, like the situation forces you to look for the good in a person. I thought was a really good way to word it, right? Because at the end of the day, yes, this is a stranger, but this person was chosen for you specifically. And I think we forget that sometimes. In this kind of situation, when somebody is choosing this person for you, because you signed up for this, you signed up for the whole 8 weeks. That means in that 8 weeks, it's not about getting to know them. It's not just about getting to know them. It's also about figuring out, now, why was I paired with this person? Even though I'm struggling in this marriage, I'm struggling for whatever reason, there was something about this person that these experts saw and thought that it would be perfect fit for me. And I feel like for a lot of the couples that do make it, they focus on that. They focus on those things that the experts saw that made them a good match. And I think as long as you focus on those things, focus on the good, I think that helps a lot. But the kicker is, if you are the person in this marriage and you're focusing on the good, if the other person in the marriage isn't doing the same, then the marriage isn't going to work. It's going to kind of fall to pieces. I, again, was bored this episode, was bored by all the couples. Even though next week we see some juicy stuff happening, what I want to happen is that Michaela and Zach and Johnny and Bao and Brett and Ryan stay together. Rachel and Jose and Meral and Gil, I see them not staying together. But I don't know. Every week is different. Every week, my favorite couple will change. So we'll see what happens. But hope you guys watched. Was there anything that I missed? Was there any couple that you wanted me to talk more about? Has anybody annoyed you? Who's the most boring person to you on this show? Because I don't know what it is this season. I'm like, it's just making me roll my eyes every week. But I'm going to stick beside them all season. So give me your thoughts, and I'd love to talk to you guys. Again, don't forget to comment below. Don't forget to like the video, share, subscribe, do all those wonderful things. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.